Governmental debate and disagreements about Canada-U.S. border safety aren't uncommon, and they're definitely not new. But soon, very soon, they're expected to get much more raucous. As Donald Trump puts together his inner circle, Ottawa is getting a better idea of who they'll be working with and a clearer picture of their views. Tom Homan will be Trump's border czar. Under President Obama, Homan headed the deportation branch of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Kristi Noem is Trump's choice to head Homeland Security. Known as a border hawk, she's also expected to focus on immigration issues. Kelly Sundberg is a former Customs and Border Services officer here in Canada and a current associate professor at Mount Royal University. Here's what he believes will happen once Trump is in office.
So as the Americans close the valve or the border movement from north to south, and as Tom Homan begins the massive deportation plan, which I have no doubt he will be successful in achieving by coordinating with local law enforcement and county sheriffs and alike, and the fact that he is openly said he doesn't care about sanctuary cities, he's going in. So if he's not worried about the mayor of New York or the mayor of San Francisco, and Justin Trudeau and our government and Jagmeet Singh also think that they somehow will convince Tom Homan that, oh, we're better than, we're okay, don't worry about us, that's just crazy and foolish.
Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc is also the vice chair of the Cabinet Committee on Canada-U.S. Relations, which has now been reconstituted, and he joins us now. Thank you so much for joining us, Minister. Nice to see you.
Good morning.
What are your reactions to the concerns we're hearing from the Trump administration about the border and what we heard Professor Sundberg saying just there about the Americans giving us no leeway?
We certainly share our American partners' view in terms of the importance of border security. Mercedes, there's a decades-long collaboration between Canada and the United States in securing the border. It's very much in the interest of Canadians. It's a basic principle of a sovereign country choosing who gets to come into their country. It's true for Canada. Canadians expect that of their government. We understand why the Americans would also take that position. But I'm very confident that the good work that the Border Services Agency in Canada does, the RCMP, of course, are responsible for the border between the 117 sort of recognized official land border crossings. It's almost a 9,000 kilometer border. The RCMP have very effective groups that patrol the border. So I'm very confident in the work that they can do with their American counterparts, and will reassure the American administration that we're prepared to do the work that's necessary.
But if the Americans look at the numbers, they have a point. Over 19,000 people have crossed illegally and been arrested from Canada into the United States over the past year. That's more than the previous 17 years combined. So why, if we have the capability, are we not using it?
Well, we are. Those numbers, the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol in Vermont reported a 50% reduction in the 3 months between June and September of this year. So there are different moments where those numbers go up and down. There's no doubt that sort of global migration has led many countries, including ours, to face challenges that a decade ago we wouldn't have seen. The Border Services Agency in Canada removed last year 15,000 people from Canada. We're on track to deport more than that this year. But we recognize we need to continue to do the work necessary. The Immigration Department, the good news is there's been a 600% increase in the fraudulent misrepresentation investigation. So these are people that apply for a visa to come into Canada, and then the visa gets investigated and ultimately declined because it's determined that they're coming for a fraudulent purpose, like to try and go into the United States. So a 600% increase in those investigations says that we're taking our responsibility seriously. But we'll continue to give them the resources they need, Mercedes, the Canadian officials, to do this job.
What would the actual numbers on that be? Because 600% sounds like a lot, but if it was a very small number to begin with, then 600% still may not be that many investigations.
Yeah, so it's a number of thousands of these investigations that have been opened and are opened every week. This is the Immigration Department. We've also done things, for example, like reimpose visa restrictions on flights coming directly from Mexico. The Immigration Department has tightened visa requirements for flights coming from India because there were some concerning numbers around people arriving on flights from India and either claiming asylum or ultimately seeking to cross the border into the United States. So the Immigration Department is very much involved in tightening up these particular pathways. And we've said over and over again, Mercedes, that if you want to come to Canada, you have to come according to a lawful pathway. There are many ways for you to come to Canada lawfully. And if you come to Canada illegally or under a fraudulent misrepresentation, you will be detained and turned around and removed.
Then why hasn't that been happening already? I mean, we hear from people working in national security that there's not enough people, and Canada does not have the ability to conduct serious inland border enforcement and deportations or to find where these people are. So the laws have been on the books all this time. Is your government committing more resources? What's going to change?
So both. We've both changed the law in terms of immigration detention. I visited an immigration detention holding facility in Laval, Quebec, a couple of weeks ago. People who are determined to represent a threat to Canadian public safety are detained there prior to being removed. We've invested almost $1 billion additional dollars in the CBSA to deal with some of these immigration either detentions or removals. There's no doubt that removing people during COVID led to some significant backlogs. We're working our way through that. We removed 15,000 people, as I said, last year. But the RCMP also, Mercedes, as you know, have the jurisdiction between the 117 recognized land border crossings. And the commissioner of the RCMP speaks to me often about 24 hours, 7 days a week patrols. They have technology which allow them to detect people. They have not seen an increase in interceptions, certainly in Quebec, where there had been a lot of focus around Roxham Road in recent months, but they're prepared and have the resources, and we'll give them the resources they need to do the job that Canadians expect them to do.
When it comes to the attention of the administration, Tom Homan, who's the border czar, knows the northern border well, right? This is a former officer who was in charge of enforcement for ICE. He's worked around northern New York, and one of the things that he said in a media interview to 7 News there was that Canada cannot be a gateway to the United States for terrorists. This is always the concern for Canada from an economic perspective, that our border will be seen as a security threat, and for the United States from a security perspective. When they look around, they see a number of people who have come to Canada, very public examples, like Mr. El-Didi, like Mr. Khan, who came to Canada either on student visas or through immigration channels. One of them got citizenship and then planned major terror attacks, one of which was planned for New York City. How are you going to reassure the Trump administration that there are not more people here planning that, and that you are able to deal with this when they clearly have concerns about it and they can point to very specific examples?
So those are 2 good examples. And I would start, Mercedes, by saying that, of course, we share their concern that the border in both directions can't be a source of potential violent extremists crossing from Canada into the United States or vice versa. So we understand and share that view ourselves. The 2 examples you referred to are also people who are now in jail in Canada facing terrorism charges. And I happen to see up close the work that CSIS and the RCMP did in both those cases with their American counterparts in terms of sharing intelligence, in terms of preparing. So that work happens every day. That work is ongoing, but we need to remain vigilant, both in Canada and the United States. The number of people who can be radicalized, for example, online, and the sort of lone wolf scenario, which I know worries our government and our American friends, is something that law enforcement worries about and prepares for all the time. But as I say, my conversations with Commissioner Duham or the president of CBSA are reassuring. I have said to them that we are, as a government, always ready to increase the resources if they determine they need specific resources to do the job that Canadians expect them to do and that we want to do with our American partners.
Are you confident that you can convince the Trump administration of these things?
I think so. I think so. I look forward to meeting our new counterparts in the incoming administration. There are so many shared objectives and so much shared history in terms of, and you noted the economic importance of this border, both to Canada, but also to the United States. I've heard from the U.S. Attorney General and the current Secretary of Homeland Security how valuable those partnerships are for American law enforcement. So the incoming administration should have a lot of confidence in that. And our job will be to reassure them that we're very much prepared to do this work with them.
I'm sure you'll have your work cut out for you. We appreciate you taking the time to join us, Minister.
Mercedes, thank you. Have a great Sunday.